Hello, welcome back to Blender CC LIVENODING. In this episode, I want to show you something a little bit messed up. It's basically a bunch of Suzanne head, but they're all glitching and weird. They're all really weird. If I move the head around, you can see that they're kind of sticking into something, right? You might can already guess what I did here, but you might actually don't know. You have no idea what's going on. But the original idea is actually coming from this video from 100 Drips channel. Transfer attributes in Blender 3.4. Okay, transfer attributes in 3.4 is actually kind of strange and a little bit difficult to understand at first. You need basically these two nodes, sample the nearest and sample index. So with the 100 drips in this like almost 3 minutes video, he explained how you can kind of transfer the end of a curve into other surfaces based on this object. So apparently the other sphere is an instance object, this icosphere, and then there's only one object that's sticking with the hair sticking into other objects. So this is kind of one really cool usage of transfer attributes. And I'm kind of doing the same thing, except here I'm using multiple Suzanne head. So let me just reduce this for a bit. So don't use too many heads, just one Suzanne head. So one Suzanne head is already a little bit, it's looking really weird. I think the weirdness of geometry nodes is really where the power is actually is the power add. So you might be able to do a lot of effects using these, maybe not as straightforward as you might think. But let me try to explain what's going on anyway. So one Suzanne head, and we have hidden boxes. So this is the original boxes. I can actually scale it, and it will actually affect Suzanne. And I have another box here, and the effects only happens if Suzanne is inside this field. You can imagine the boxes as some kind of fields, and Suzanne geometry will change, and it will actually really dependent on the boxes itself. I cannot pull it out. Maybe I can pull it really far until the effects disappear. Oh, don't worry about the alarm. But if I scale it, I can scale Suzanne head. I can transform the boxes instances, and it will affect the head in a really weird way. And I think this is really the power of geometry nodes. It doesn't do like what Maya, Houdini, or Cinema 4D does, maybe, but it has this really interesting effects on geometry, and it's actually quite simple with the setup. If you look at this, okay, first of all, I subdivided Suzanne multiple times, so I have more resolutions, subdivision surface, and then I can transform Suzanne or just keep it at 0, 0, 0. I don't need this transform node, but I can move Suzanne around. I can move it here, and it's gonna have different effects. Okay, so this this is also kind of interesting. Randomize the position of Suzanne, and you might have different result. Anyhow, we can zero this out. So what I did here is simply just using set positions and the offset. And the offset is really offsetting Suzanne position based on the index value that it's sampling. To be really clear, let's see. Okay, I have this collection of boxes, right? And then I instance a bunch of those. If I just transfer this out, you can see this is just random boxes all over the places, all over the place. We can, okay, reset children, separate children. And I can have less boxes. I can randomize the position of the boxes. Okay, we already know that. And I realize these instances into a single mesh, and then I transfer the position of these boxes into Suzanne head. Simply offsetting. I can actually use the position as well. With the position, it's probably gonna snap to the nearest points of that boxes. If I have more points as close as possible to Suzanne, we get that. It's like a triangulated Suzanne. Yeah, it's really weird effects. Like, it's almost, you don't have 100% control, but you kind of like the result somewhat. Let's see. I think separate children and reset children probably what we want, but play around with that idea. So this is it's just a collection of these boxes. It could be any boxes or it could be any geometry, and I simply put it inside a collections, and then it's becoming instance right away. And in Blender geometry nodes, you can instance those as points, and you kind of scatter them. Anyhow, to simplify the idea now, I mean, I just use it to offset the original Suzanne geometry, and yeah, by simply transferring the vector value. So this position definitely coming from our Suzanne, but the rest of them, the rest of information is sampling it from the nearest geometry. Position, points, in this case point position. We can also use faces or edges. You get all kind of different results. It's like a scrambled, it's really messed up, completely messed up. If I move this around, let's see, if I turn this off and move Suzanne around, you can see the effects totally different. So it's really a lot of different variables you can use. I think the way we can logically understand this is that it's almost like Suzanne head geometry is affected by invisible fields. The invisible field is these boxes that we scatter around. So I think that's what geometry nodes is really good for. There's a similar node that does the same thing, like sample nearest and sample index. It's called proximity. There's also other thing like nearest, sample nearest surface. This also might give you an interesting result. I haven't tried this myself. Let's try sample nearest surface. Took me a while. I think it's slightly confusing sometimes with all these points. There, sample nearest surface. Let's delete all other Suzanne for now. We have only one. This one will transfer to the nearest box position. Remember, we have all these random boxes kind of hidden. Yeah, but I think, it's really quirky. It's really weird that this actually works that way, but just want to show you that this is kind of what geometry nodes can do. You know, it's not like your typical transfer attributes like in Houdini or Maya or Cinema 4D. I don't know. They have similar things, but yeah, it's more like the geometry nodes kind of way. You know, sample nearest index. Um, yeah, face. We can use face. Sample position. I don't know. Can really totally get totally different unusual result. I don't know how to explain it. I think it's simpler to look at this one, but still it's kind of interesting. So simplify it with single Suzanne and just try to understand this first. Suzanne head, and there's like invisible instance of the boxes, and then we can kind of, okay, geometry nodes, do your magic, just sample the nearest face or index. I don't know, in this case sample the nearest surface. They are very similar. I don't know how they might have their reason. The geometry nodes developer have their reason to separate transfer nodes into multiple nodes like this. It's a little bit more complicated, but you can, because of that, you can actually do this. Probably, yeah. Just, I guess, play around with these ideas just to understand this first, and then in the next video, or I don't know which video, I will try to use this with repeat zone. So at the moment it's just, we are just offsetting position, right? What happens if we use it with simulation or using it with repeat zone? Okay, so it's a lot of potential here. The glitch, at least I think this, for this we have like some kind of glitch effects. It's kind of nice. I like this kind of weird randomness. Okay, so that's basically it. Hopefully you find this useful. Try to rebuild the setup from scratch, and then it's up to you whether you want to start with Suzanne or you start with the actual collections, and you start to try to make sense. If it doesn't make sense, at least you just use simple sample nearest and sample index first, or use it with sample nearest surface, and then this is the position of original position of Suzanne geometry, which is it's being used to sample the index, and then we can use the output as offset. Okay, so yeah, hopefully that's useful. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye.